This idea of expansion, that the AATA says it will be economically good for the area as a regional growth engine for jobs, and as an efficient use of resources for the AATA to become the Washtenaw County provider and connector with other counties. Do you both agree with that premise?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I have problems with it.
Okay.
Who represents the money, that the taxpayers that are coming in? The representation could be a sticking point. If everyone who pays taxes wants their own local representative, this could get to be a very large board. But you have more to say about, because I could go on about this.
Well, it's going to tie into that. We really need to connect to other counties and other municipalities. Livonia is no longer working with SMART, and we were at a few years ago.
Tell
before,
everybody what SMART is.
Oh, the South Michigan Area Regional Transit Authority, and it's a multi-county bus system, and they were operating out of Livonia. Livonia voted not to be part of SMART, and for us to connect Washtenaw and Ann Arbor people into Detroit, we would have to bypass Livonia, making it too expensive to do any connections. AATA is running a bus into Plymouth, but we do it through Indian Trails because the Ann Arbor Authority can't do it. But going back to this, the county-wide issue, AATA has been looking to go county-wide for years, and they've run surveys on it, but there has never been enough voter support to actually go county-wide. And this is a very complicated situation. You talk about the difference between an Act 55 and an Act 196. That's what a lot of the buzz is about right now. And the difference between the two is an Act 55 can do everything an Act 196 can do, including rail, but Act 55 has a very defined regional boundary. An Act 196 doesn't have the regional boundaries. They can, geographically, there's no boundaries to a 196. So AATA can stay as an Act 55, and we will wind up with countywide transportation. So when you get talking to these different entities, they'll talk city transportation, they'll talk countywide transportation, and they'll talk regional transportation. And a lot of times you think they're talking about one when they're really not. So we need to define what these three different entities are. The city transportation is what's covered in the city charter. The city charter says 2.5 mils, but because of Headley, it's not that anymore. If you check your summer tax forms, on there you'll see mass transportation, and it's down to 2.056. So AATA started off in '73 making 2.5 mils, and now in 2010 they haven't gone up, they've gone down. So this is equivalent of a company hiring you and paying you $25,000 in '73, and now they're only paying you $20,560 with inflation. And you know what? So AATA is doing a lot more on a lot less.
Let me interrupt for a second. But our population since '74 has grown. So
not very much.
But not that much. A lot of people
not enough to make up for the Headley rollback.
No, I wouldn't think so.
But the price of gasoline in '73 was nothing compared to what it is now. Every penny that gas goes up or fuel goes up, it costs AATA $7,000.
Okay.
The price of buying motor coaches and replacement parts has also gone up quite a bit.
And probably wages and so
wages, insurance, and retirement. So they have had to do more and more and more and less and less and less. And they've done an excellent job.
They've done an excellent job. What do you say that the state gives money and the federal government also gives money? So it's not dependent just on the fares, right?
The fares
and the tax, and it's not. The AATA is not dependent on just those two things because the state and federal give money too.
Right. Thank goodness for Epi and her friends who put in that perpetual millage. That allowed AATA to build a great system. And back in those days, we were one of the first to develop a transit authority. And that allowed us to get into programs that people can no longer get into. And we wound up with having very high matching funds back in those days from the state and the federal government. Most of those programs have greatly diminished. We've actually lost a lot of the matching funds that we were getting from the states and federal government.
Well, and if I could interrupt,
Certainly.
my impression is, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is that when you get state or federal funds from outside, it tends to be for capital costs.
Yes.
For
Right.
buildings, for buses, for
Yes.
things like this. And operating,
Not
they
operating.
don't tend to give operating money, and that's what's needed.
Right.
I mean, there's no point in having lots of new buses if we can't afford to hire drivers.
Right.
So that I've always been kind of touchy about that. That
Yes.
when it comes to the operation of the system, that's up to the Ann Arbor citizens and their millage.
Right.
Right.
And the fares, people think the fares pay quite a bit. It doesn't. You're really talking at the most 17% the cost of that ride. You have to, on public transportation, it has to be subsidized.
And we wouldn't want the fares to be high.
No.
But on the other hand, the cost of running the buses has to come from somewhere.
The fares, in fact, are going up from $1 to $1.25
Well,
to $1.50.
It's
but
a
not
dollar a
for
quarter now.
Right. So, but they started $1. So this is a progression.
Right.
And you think, what about this increasing amount in fares?
That's what Lansing and the other transit authorities are paying. We were always below what the market was charging.
We were below what
We
the
were
market.
below it. But now we're up to what the average is.
Right. But my understanding that for seniors and for handicapped, there has not been. Is that correct?
The seniors and people with disabilities can ride the buses for free. And they did a study a few years ago, back in the early 90s, and they found that when they charge seniors and people with disabilities a quarter, they use the paratransit system more. When you let them ride for free, it dropped the paratransit use by at least 10%.
Okay, and the paratransit is?
That's services, door-to-door services for people with disabilities, and the senior ride is for anybody 65 and older. They can go to AATA and get what's called a gold card, and they can also use a door-to-door service. Now that's also gone up.
But of course, that's much more expensive.
Yes.
If they could be on the buses, it would be so much better.
Well, the buses, the buses are free for seniors and people with disabilities. But what they charge people, seniors and people with disabilities who use the cab, it's twice what a bus fare is. So if the bus fare goes up to $1.50, the door-to-door service is $3. If you call in advance on same day, it's $4. When you consider if you live in the middle of the city and you go from the middle of the city to the border, it runs about $5 or $6. So the paratransit cost is, by increasing the price of the bus, is almost a cost of a cash cab.
Okay.